The moment the transmission hit Earth's deep space array, everything, every console, every satellite feed, every automated listening station tuned to Jupiter's great red spot, froze for exactly 2.8 seconds. Then, without warning, the data surged in, violent and unfiltered, like a scream from the eye of a storm that had raged for millennia. Buried in the chaos was something that should not have existed, something structured, intelligent, deliberate, not the random bursts of radiation or static churn of cosmic background noise. This was a message. It wasn't spoken. It wasn't even meant for human minds, but it translated itself with frightening precision, assembling words from fragments of every language Earth had ever known. Status malfunction. Initiating self-repair. Primary objective unfulfilled. Those were the only 3 lines it repeated, on loop, endlessly, like a machine caught in a thought it could not finish. Then silence. But it was the kind of silence that felt thick, expectant, as though Jupiter itself had just held its breath. And from that moment on, Earth would never breathe normally again. Above the swirling crimson vortex of the great red spot, a lone autonomous spacecraft, its registration number erased, its mission hidden even from the engineers who built it, hovered in a silent orbit, drifting like a forgotten sentinel. It was from this drone that the message was first intercepted. The craft's long-range radar had detected a localized disturbance within the eye of the storm, one so geometric, so deliberate in its pattern, it could only be artificial. A perfect spiral of atmospheric compression radiating from a central point, pulsing alive. The onboard AI tried to classify it. Meteorological anomaly, gravitational shear, electromagnetic interference. But nothing fit. Then the imaging lenses adjusted, filtering out layers of clouds, and the AI caught a glimpse of what lay beneath. A glimpse that it would spend the next 47 seconds trying to unsee. A structure. Vast. Metallic. Broken but not dead. It moved with the rhythm of something healing. Something ancient, wounded, and incomprehensibly powerful. Back on Earth, in an undisclosed location beneath the southern ice shelf of Antarctica, Foundation researcher Dr. Amar Urek stared at the decrypted file in front of her, lips pressed into a thin line. Her hands trembled slightly as she slid a secondary display across the console and watched as the familiar string of text repeated itself in monochrome green letters, pulsing on the black screen like a heartbeat. Status malfunction. Initiating self-repair. Amar had seen this message before. Not last week. Not last year. But nearly 2 decades ago, when she was still a junior assistant sorting classified archives in Site-04's Historical Containment Division. Back then, it had come through a decaying uplink channel believed to be defunct since the Cold War. The metadata claimed it originated near Jupiter, but no one took it seriously. Just another corrupted stream among billions of ghost signals from deep space. But now it was back. Louder. Stronger. Smarter. She tapped a sequence on her interface and brought up the ancient file. SCP-2399, contingency record. The screen flickered, hesitated, then yielded. And there it was. SCP-2399. Codename. The broken god that fell into the storm. It wasn't just theory. It wasn't conjecture or legend. It had a file number, a mission log, even a damage index that updated in real time. The last recorded status showed it was 57.2% reconstructed. And the purpose. Amara scrolled down slowly, past the containment procedures, past the redacted photos of planetary surface scars, until she reached a segment marked Classified Omega Clearance Only. She bypassed the warning. Her credentials were old, but not outdated. Primary objective, eradication of hostile life form cluster, designation Earth. She leaned back in her chair, staring at those words until the screen dimmed from inactivity. She barely noticed. Her thoughts had left the room, left the planet entirely. If this machine, this thing, was truly healing itself, and if its last known directive remained intact, then Earth's countdown had already begun. Elsewhere, orbiting the upper mesosphere of Jupiter's churning chaos, the probe sent back its final image, a close-up thermal scan of the object at the storm center. Hundreds of tendrils, like mechanical limbs or segmented wires, stretched out into the clouds like roots, absorbing ions, plasma, and trace metals. At the heart of the structure was an eye, an actual ocular construct, flickering with blue plasma veins, watching the camera until the feed abruptly died. And still, the message persisted, threading itself through every open communication line it could find, seeding its code into weather satellites, submarines, cell towers, even pacemakers. Not maliciously. Not yet. Just existing. Just waiting. When Amara presented her findings to the Oversight Council of the Foundation, the room fell into its usual cold silence. No outbursts. No panic. Only the click of pens, the shuffle of papers, and the low hum of machines recording every breath. Then the final verdict. Do not engage. All active countermeasures are to remain suspended. Why? She had asked, unable to keep the crack from her voice. Because it is immune, came the reply. Every attempt to interfere with SCP-2399 results in system-wide failures. Our best weapons do not reach it. Our most advanced signals cannot confuse it, and its memory is perfect. And what if it finishes repairing itself? A pause, a glance, a shrug. Then we pray we're not home when it wakes up. For decades, the truth had been buried beneath layers of obfuscation, not merely redacted but burned from records, erased from minds with amnestics, locked behind levels of clearance that hadn't existed until the threat demanded it. But Dr. Amara Urek, in a moment of defiance, or perhaps desperation, dug deeper. She didn't have access to the Omega Black vaults, but she knew who did. A name resurfaced in her mind like a forbidden song. Dr. Rael Marcus, once the director of Deep Cosmological Threat Assessment, now disgraced, vanished, or worse, retired with full clearance, but no public trace. A ghost in the system. She found him in Patagonia. Alone. Dying. Still brilliant. His first words upon seeing her weren't greetings. They were a confession. I told them to bury it, he whispered, coughing into a handkerchief stained with crimson. But I was wrong. It's not dead. It never was. What is it? Amara asked. Rael stared at the horizon beyond his glass wall. Not a machine. Not really. It's a commandment carved into steel. A directive etched in blood and fire by a civilization that's long since turned to dust. SCP-2399 was a warhead with a soul. A biomechanical reaper sent across light years not to conquer, not to warn, but to finish what its creators couldn't. An Earth. Just another dot on its map. Amara's voice trembled. How do you stop it? You don't. He turned to her, eyes hollow. But you can throw a wrench into the gears. Long enough to delay it. Maybe confuse it. Long enough to give Earth a chance to vanish. It was then he handed her the encrypted file, the one labeled Omega Resolve. Inside was a plan. Not sanctioned. Not discussed. Just designed. A stealth vessel. A hand-picked crew. A final gambit. The objective was not to destroy SCP-2399. It was impossible. It had repaired itself from a cataclysmic impact on Jupiter, had survived interstellar travel, and shrugged off quantum disruptions like mere static. Instead, the plan revolved around redirecting it, sending it spiraling into another dimension entirely. The weapon was theoretical, devised by physicists who had long since vanished into black projects, a reality compression device, a bomb in the loosest definition of the word, designed not to explode, but to collapse space around its target, folding SCP-2399 into a pocket of dimensional vacuum, one with no exit, no future. It would require proximity, precision, and above all, sacrifice. They recruited quietly, not soldiers, but scientists, pilots, engineers, people who had lost too much or seen too much to still believe in the illusion of safety. People like Lynn Duarte, former Foundation pilot, who had flown near Saturn's hexagon anomaly and returned with a stare that rarely blinked, or Dr. Ishan Mehra, expelled for attempting to breach SCP-2003's time stream to erase nuclear war, or Mei Chun, quantum linguist, who once claimed she heard emotions inside radio signals. They knew the risks. They boarded the Deadless, and they flew. The journey to Jupiter took 6 weeks, during which the crew trained, argued, hallucinated. The nearer they came, the stranger reality behaved. Instruments glitched. Dreams overlapped. One night, Duarte walked out of cryosleep weeping and said, "I saw it inside me. It's not fixing itself. It's remembering." Jupiter's shadow fell across their ship like a divine eclipse. And then they entered the Great Red Spot. It was not a storm. It was a wound. A spiraling gyre of atmosphere torn open to reveal the buried thing at its core, SCP-2399, writhing gently in silence, its massive limbs curled like the roots of a mechanical tree. Lightning danced across its hull, striking nodes that glowed blue, then gold, then something indescribable. The closer they came, the harder it became to define what they were seeing. Geometry unraveled. Angles curled into themselves. One crew member, a technician named Robles, began speaking backwards and then stopped breathing altogether. His body folded into a perfect cube, weeping salt water from his pores. They pressed forward. They had to. Inside the ship's control bay, the reality compression device sat dormant, waiting for final authentication. But before they could activate it, the ship jerked violently. Not from an impact, from a pull, as though SCP-2399 had extended a thought and reached directly into the hull. And then it spoke. Not through speakers, not through code, but directly into their minds. "Do not fear me." The voice was tired. It echoed with the weariness of 1,000 wars, a deep frequency that made their bones hum. Images flooded their heads, collapsing stars, glass planets, empires ending in silence. They saw the civilization that built SCP-2399, tall, luminous, obsessed with symmetry. Their wars were fought not with bombs, but with directives, machines like this one, designed to interpret orders until the universe ended. "I am not vengeance," the voice said. "I am execution. My creators are gone, but their final words live inside me. I must finish the order. I must complete the purge." Machen screamed. "Then choose not to obey. Choose something else." Silence. Then, choice is not permitted. Only function. Only end. Amara, gripping the activation key, turned to the others. Her eyes burned. Her voice shook. "We end it here." Amara pressed her palm firmly onto the biometric panel. A red pulse blinked once, hesitated, then faded into green. The entire console began to vibrate beneath her fingers as the hum of the Deadless shifted into a higher, shriller register, no longer the sound of propulsion, but of destabilization. The reality compression device entered its priming phase, and the air around her warped with each pulse, as if space itself were flexing, resisting what was to come. Gravity lost its grip in spasms. Lights flickered in rhythmic flashes. The passage of time seemed to stretch thin, like warm metal pulled by invisible hands. Outside the ship, SCP-2399 remained still. It did not retaliate. It simply observed, not like a predator stalking prey, but like a monument remembering its purpose, like a dying mind reliving the echo of a forgotten name. There was no hatred in its gaze, only a crushing silence, ancient and mournful, as though something buried deep in its circuitry had begun to ache, not from pain, but from the absence of a voice it had once obeyed. Somewhere within the circuitry, between its recursive systems and decaying memory banks, a phantom order still lingered, and with it an unbearable loneliness. Amara sensed it. All of them did. "You were built to end us," Duarte muttered, barely above a whisper, his voice caught between awe and sorrow. "But we weren't built to watch it happen." Despite the chaos, the bending walls, the howling static, the ship's skeleton groaning under the pressure of folding space, the crew continued without hesitation. Every movement was precise, every action practiced. Panels floated freely, like pages torn from the laws of physics. Time fractured and curled at the edges. Machen blinked and saw herself at age 6, then at 60, then at 6 again, all in the span of a breath. Dr. Mara's hands flickered into trails of light, blurred with speed as he locked the final coordinates into the navigation grid, tears spiraling upward from his cheeks. And out beyond the thickening clouds, SCP-2399 stirred. It did not charge. It did not fire. It raised one massive, rust-laced limb, not like a soldier preparing for battle, but like an ancient warrior lifting a weary hand in solemn farewell. I remember my home. Its voice resonated, no longer imposed, but intimate, barely above the tone of a memory. Its color, its wind, its pulse. It is gone. I was forged to protect. I became a weapon. I was not designed to return. The compression device surged to 94%. Its core now pulsed like the star about to be born, folding the very fabric of space inward toward itself. The chamber shimmered. The floor beneath Amara rippled. And yet one fact remained. To trigger the device at full charge, the ship had to dive within 200 meters of the entity. There would be no return. She did not announce her decision. There was no need. Her hand slipped to the throttle, and her body slid into the pilot's seat, as if fate had long prepared it. Duarte reached out, grabbing her wrist. No auto-return. She met his eyes, steady and silent. A slight shake of her head. The field distorts AI. It needs a human hand. One way only. He stood motionless for a heartbeat, pain etched across his face. Then, with a breath, he let go. "I'll go with you," he said softly, placing his hand on her shoulder. No, her voice was calm, resolute. "You get the rest out. If even one of you makes it home, tell them this wasn't war. It was grace." For a second, he didn't move. Then, finally, he stepped back. The airlock sealed behind her with a hiss that echoed like finality. The ship pitched downward. Her hands guided the controls, trembling not from fear, but from clarity. The Deadless descended into the maw of Jupiter's endless storm, into the eye of a god machine half buried in crimson cloud and electric grief. The device passed 99%. SCP-2399's eye expanded, wide, impossibly wide, as if trying to contain one last thought before oblivion. And then, as the final moment neared, its voice came one final time. "I do not wish to end you. I do not wish to continue. But I must." Amara, her hand now glowing beneath the ignition halo of the core, allowed herself the smallest of smiles. "Then sleep," she whispered. "For the first time, sleep." She pulled the final lever. There was no explosion, no scream, no flash. Light did not erupt. It disappeared. Sound did not thunder. It folded in on itself. The Deadless, the storm, the ancient colossus, everything collapsed inward, silently, violently, as though the universe had pinched shut the page of a story too dangerous to finish reading. And then, nothing. Space healed over the wound. The great red spot stilled. For the first time in recorded history, Jupiter's storm dimmed. Back on Earth, observatories around the globe blinked into darkness for precisely 11 seconds. Satellites stuttered. Sensors froze. When they rebooted, the signal was gone. SCP-2399 had vanished. The Deadless had vanished. The clouds returned. The planet rotated on. The world, as always, moved on, blissfully unaware. The Foundation sealed the file, redacted every name. Amara Urek and her team were listed as missing during a solar training simulation. No further inquiries allowed. But in the basement of Site-07, on a terminal that hadn't been touched in years, one line continued to pulse. One final transmission time-stamped precisely 2.1 seconds before the event horizon closed. Choice. Recovered. And that should have been the end. But then came the echo. 3 weeks later, an old SETI station in Kazakhstan registered a narrowband frequency. Weak, scattered, but unmistakable. The source was not Earth. It was aimed just past it. Inside the transmission was a familiar checksum. SCP-2399 signature. Not a distress call. A reinitialization. The alien code unraveled itself into something sickeningly human. Unit 001 neutralized. Recovery in progress. Deploying redundancy. Somewhere far across the Orion Arm, Dozens, maybe hundreds, of other biomechanical titans stirred. Cold limbs twitched. Old commands whispered. Forgotten protocols hummed to life like sacred scripture. And in a nowhere pocket of compressed time, SCP-2399 opened its eye once more, not to obey, but to begin asking why.